Supermarket.
Welcome everyone to the Supermarket podcast 2025. And today's conversation is about something really important to Box Divvy and to the environment and our future, sustainability in the fishing industry, with a special focus on New Zealand Ora King Salmon.
This is episode 9, Jane. Wow, we've reached our 9th podcast and our first one for 2025. So welcome, everyone. Today, we will be swimming upstream with New Zealand salmon, actually, and their sustainable seas that surround the farming there. You may have heard that Box Divvy has switched from the Tasmanian salmon to New Zealand, and this is purely for environmental reasons.
Yeah, and I might jump in here, Lee, just to say that New Zealand Ora King Salmon has an amazing flavour.
I know, Jane. I've tried it. I have compared them. Certainly a stronger colour, and it's a beautiful flavour. Plus, it's got the bonus omega-3. Today, we're going to unpack the unique qualities of this incredible fish, the challenges facing the aquaculture, and the innovative solutions being developed to ensure a healthy future for our oceans.
Yeah, without giving too much away too, Lee, from our interview with Pyrmont Fisheries, aka Getfish, who supply this to our members. By the way, I might also like to mention that they do supply Tasmanian salmon to their customers, but Box Divvy has made this decision about what salmon they want to offer, and our preference is New Zealand salmon. And I guess we'd like to just show you what the New Zealand salmon is like.
Excellent, Jane. And so tell me, where does this exceptional fish come from in New Zealand and how is it raised?
Well, actually, before I do that, I just want to point out that did you know that a quarter of Australians eat salmon at least once a week, and that uptake's increasing? So that's great news.
Yep.
So can you just picture for a minute vast ocean farms where much of New Zealand salmon is raised in pristine waters of the Marlborough Sound, flushed with water that gushes up from the lower regions of the ocean floor, and the South Island's glacial-fed hydro canals. It's just picture perfectly.
You painted that picture for me, Jane. I have a visual also because I recently visited the South Island of New Zealand, and New Zealand is unique because it has very strict regulations about the farming and harvesting of salmon. So they focus on minimising environmental impact, using practices that reduce pollution and that protect the surrounding ecosystems. So sustainability isn't just a buzzword, it's a priority for the industry in New Zealand.
Yeah, and many people, Lee, wonder about what sustainability in fishing really means. Look, it's crucial for several reasons because, look, obviously, if we overfish or harm the marine environment, we're not only affecting the fish population, but the entire ecosystem. And with New Zealand salmon farms located in the cleanest of waters and waters that move and shift and have fresh inflow. From our interview with Jason and Frank at Pyrmont Fisheries, aka Getfish, they indicated that there are improved farming techniques and increased transparency, and that's what this interview is about, where the salmon is raised.
And what do you think the one thing that people will take away from this conversation about New Zealand salmon and sustainability?
The biggest takeaway I could see was the sustainable fishing practices, that they really matter, not just for the fish, but for the health of all the oceans and the future of the fishing industry. We have chosen, Box Divvy have chosen the Ora New Zealand King Salmon because we want to support an approach that prioritises the quality, our health and the planet, which is what Box Divvy is about.
So let's dive in and hear what Jason and Frank from Getfish have to show us in this video.
Hey guys, my name is Anton. I'm one of the co-founders of Box Divvy. I'm here with Frank and Jason from Gatfish, who you probably know as Pyrmont Seafood. They are supplying us every week with all the seafood and the prawns and the salmon. And in fact, the reason we're here is because for a while now we've had reservations about Atlantic salmon farmed in Tasmania. There's no wild caught salmon in Australia. It's all farmed in Tassie. And for a few reasons, we're not so comfortable with that because, first of all, there's quite a bit of environmental damage that's caused by salmon farming. Secondly, all three companies now, Huon, Tassal and Petuna, are in overseas ownership. Overseas corporations own it. And these guys, they're not really interested in the Australian market. They've been jacking up the price almost like every couple of months, and it's becoming very expensive. So we started to look at alternatives, and this is where we turned to Jason and Frank and said, guys, what alternatives are they? What can we offer our customers, our members, as alternatives to farmed Tassie Atlantic salmon?
So we've been using king salmon, which is a similar species of salmon to the Atlantic salmon, farmed in New Zealand. It's actually not allowed to be farmed in Australia, just like Atlantic salmon species farmed in Australia can't be farmed in New Zealand. So
it's a different subspecies.
It's a different subspecies of salmon, yeah. So you'll find that the king salmon is generally a little fattier in texture, and also because of the fatness and high in oil content also, you'll find that it's less fishy, and it's actually as far as eating your fish as a raw crudo, whether you want to marinate it, for instance, in a bit of acidic dressing, or if you want to have it as sashimi, it is literally chalk and cheese to the Atlantic salmon.
So as a sashimi, it tastes better?
Oh, so much better.
Okay.
So as an example, you go to any branded, decent Japanese restaurant, they all use New Zealand king salmon.
Yeah.
No one uses Atlantic salmon.
Talk to me about how New Zealand salmon or the king salmon is farmed in New Zealand as opposed to the Atlantic salmon in Tasmania.
So look, as far as the food source with pellet feeding and so on, it's very similar to what we do in Australia. It's not even about the food source, it's the ethics and the morals behind the companies in New Zealand, where unlike Australian farmers tend to overload their pens with fish, the New Zealanders seem to be a little bit more humane, let's say, in the way they like to respect their fish.
Maybe less greedy.
A lot less, maybe less greedy. Are you Kiwi, are you? A lot less fish in the ponds. We were fortunate enough, only about a month or so ago, we went to New Zealand, had a look at some of these farms, and the environments, they're tidal environments, farmed in the Marlborough Sounds, one particular one, and these environments that you could see the fish actually relaxed, they're not stressed. But it all starts from their hatchery, and where they have the beginnings, where they actually lay their eggs, hatch the eggs, and farm them in a very controlled, monitored scenario, and very conscious with the way they get the fish its first sort of get up and go. So they're taking fresh water from earth, upwelling environment of this fresh water, which hovers around under the Earth's crust for about 10 years before it reaches the surface. And it runs through, well, they were fortunate enough to negotiate many years ago to actually have the rights to divert this natural spring, and it runs through where they build this land farm. So this fish is basically grown in this pristine environment. In fact, it's been quoted to have the clearest water on planet Earth.
Right.
There's 30-metre visibility underwater. It's outrageous. And
it's unique. And the other thing to note too, Ant, is two things that in addition to what Frank is saying, what really caught my eye was the actual people who worked there. They were so passionate. Their staff, they were passionate. They believed in their system. They believed in their environment. They believed in the product.
It's not just about money.
It wasn't about the money.
No.
And that struck to me as if to say, well, these guys are on the right track.
Yeah.
The other important thing to note is as well, just on the environment, the temperature of the water does not change all year round. So it sits around, Frank, was about 19 degrees, was it? Or 20?
Yeah,
19,
somewhere 17 and
somewhere
19
between
degrees.
17 and 19 degrees. It doesn't change all year round.
Yeah.
Whether it be snowing, whether it be... And that, for me, was very, very unique.
Yeah.
So what that does is the fish stay consistently at good condition all year round.
So if I can sum it up, they have a happier life. They grow by nice people. They taste better than Atlantic salmon farmed in Tassie, in Tasmania. What about
They're
price?
better for you.
Oh, and they're better for you as
They're
well.
better oil,
More omega-3.
More
More
omega-3, absolutely.
And omega-3 oils, everyone knows, omega-3 oils are good for you, but why are they good for you? So just to break it down really simplified, basically as you consume fish with omega-3 oils, it enters your arteries, lubricates your veins, keeps your blood flowing smoothly, so it prevents blood clot.
That's why the doctors
And-
always ask you to eat more fish.
Especially deep sea.
Yeah,
Exactly
so
right, yeah.
in essence, that's what it does. What it does for fish, it's a thermostat for fish. It stops the fish from freezing.
Yeah.
So it just sits just below the skin of the fish,
Yeah.
and the flesh sits in a little corrugated groove there, and it acts as a thermostat. So that's why it's always good to eat the skin of the fish as well.
Yeah.
That's the healthiest part.
Yeah. Okay, so what about price? How much is it compared with?
Look, it is a little
Atlantic?
more expensive. It is a little more expensive, but because of the Atlantic
But the
salmon
gap-
recently,
the gap's shrinking,
Exactly
isn't it?
right. It's
right.
shrinking. It's actually
right.
shrinking. Yeah.
There's only a couple of dollars in it between one or the other. So you could either go out and you buy yourself a $30,000 Toyota, or you buy yourself a $35,000 Mercedes. That's what we're talking now.
Where do you get that from?
It's not up for sale.
You're selling cars now.
New Zealand. It's called the King Mercedes Salmon.
But I can speak very openly and with Frank as well, saying that when we went there, it was quite impressive. We didn't expect to actually find what we found in terms of the environment, in terms of the culture, and in terms of the systems they had. The sustainability beliefs and the systems. It was fantastic. So we were really impressed. Yeah.
And this is the Ora King Salmon we're talking about now.
yeah.
I've also went on a previous trip and visited the Alpine King Salmon, which is in Mount Cook. And that's salmon which is basically farmed in glacier water.
Wow.
Pristine melted snow in man-made canals, and it's basically farmed in this amazing freshwater
So it's
environment.
more like rainbow trout.
Well, it's all salmon. All salmon start off freshwater regardless. So yeah, a little bit like rainbow trout. But once again, it's so unique. It is just you've got to try it.
Yeah. The other salmon I was going to ask you about. I've read all the information about native Australian salmon, caught in New South Wales, caught in WA.
Caught in everywhere.
What's the story with native Australian salmon? It's not Atlantic, different salmon.
No, it's not. It's a beach salmon. It's an Australian beach salmon. It is white fleshed. It's got zero oil. They're sand salmon. That's why you can go beach fishing for these guys. So you go on the beach. You're not going to go out in deep sea and catch it. You're going to stand on the beach there. You're going to cast your rod, and they're swimming in the shallows, eating small little fish which are hovering around the shallows. There's shallow water fish, very low oil. In fact, so low that you can't even. There's not a great deal you could do to it. If you attempt to grill it, it'll be so dry
Textures
that you just couldn't eat it.
conducive to heat.
If you break it down and you roast it, well, once again, it's going to dry. The very, very few ways of doing anything with it.
What about fish cakes? Do you bind it with something?
Well, you've got to bind it, but you need oil to help bind.
Sure.
It won't bind. So you need to add other things to help it bind. But it's not even about that. The flavour's very bland. And there's no taste to it.
And I guess a fact to that, we deal with many restaurants in Sydney and alike, and you don't see any zero on any menus to give you an idea. And the reason for that is exactly what Frank was saying: the texture, the flavour.
It's hard to make it tasty.
The other thing is also because of the lack of request for it.
Yeah, there's no supply.
No supply. We're going to I'm going to get them to cut us some Atlantic salmon, and some New Zealand King Salmon.
Yeah.
And what we're going to do is have a little taste test.
Yeah. So what we've got here is we're continuing our comparison or comparing our salmons from an Atlantic, Tasmanian Atlantic to a New Zealand King. This is the salmon in its raw form. We're going to put it on the grill and cook it as we would at home, and then we're going to taste it and see what the jury says about the flavours. So that'll be interesting to see what we think of the flavours of the two. The salmon are going to be cooked in a little bit of olive oil and just cooked very plain and simply, so we can get the actual integrity of the flavour of the fish itself. So it's important to know what the flavour is like in its rawness, its organicness, and we'll then maybe get you some recipes to enhance your flavours, and also we're very interested to see what the jury says. Now, we don't know which one's which, obviously. I haven't exposed that as yet, but you can see the skin is a little bit different on the two as well. You can see it's a little bit darker here, and a bit lighter on the other one. Generally, when cooking salmon, and if it's that thick, it generally takes approximately about on the hot grill, generally about 8 or so minutes. If it's a bit thinner, a little bit less, but it's obviously to your taste. What's your name, Steve, mate?
Oh, yum.
We're good to go.
Which is which?
I'm not going to tell you yet until you taste it.
All right. Movies.
All right, so one of these pieces is king salmon, the other is Atlantic salmon, and we can't tell the difference.
Ta-da!
So we're gonna
One
taste-
of
we're
these
gonna taste
pieces is Atlantic salmon, another piece is
The king.
Then king salmon.
Drum roll.
All is to be revealed.
Drum roll.
All is to be revealed.
You'll almost be able to tell just by flaking it off with the fork.
And I love the king, the king, the king. I love the king. Oh, yum, yum, yum.
Whoops.
See, I can't get it quick enough.
Yep.
Can't take it anywhere.
And I was actually correct. When a fish has more oil, and as you were saying, under the skin, it has more impact, and so it's a little flatter. You notice this one's a little fluffier,
So
but
Jane,
this
what
one
you
is a
say
bit more
then?
dense.
So you're saying that that's the king
This
salmon?
is definitely a thing. Yeah, you can taste it.
Yeah.
So if you like a really moist, flavoursome, really full of omega-3,
Healthy.
the king one is the one to go for. This one doesn't have quite as much taste, and as you can see, it's a bit more flaky, a bit more fluffier, but it doesn't have that vibrancy. So, yeah. No, this one definitely has the flavour.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yum. You'll see with this New Zealand salmon, the king salmon, you can see the skin on that side, but see this grey through here, and you can see that coming off. That's the omega-3, and that's the bit you need to eat. That's and it's delicious. It's really got a lovely flavour. But you'll notice with the king salmon, which we were just saying that you cook so that 1/3 is cooked with the skin down, and then when 1/3 is cooked, then you flip it over.
Just before the two ends meet,
Yeah.
that's when it's time to take it off.
Okay, so that it cooks the bottom, 1/3, turn it over, and when the two bits,
Just before they meet. So a third on the other side, on each side,
Yeah.
and you'll find that it's almost translucent, raw in the centre. You rest it and you see it just comes through and meets.
continue cooking after
It will,
you've
that's a
taken
good
it off.
point.
So
Yeah,
that's
exactly right.
careful, mostly.
Good point.
So this is the Atlantic salmon, so you can see how different it is. It is fluffier. It has a much opener texture, but the flavour is not as
not there.
It's not a strong flavour for the king salmon, but it's got a really lovely flavour. Whereas this one, you're searching for it. So that is the difference. If you like something really, really bland, then go for the Atlantic salmon. But if you want something with really good flavour, then I'd say the king salmon.
So Frank, Jason, thank you very much for this information. It was very helpful.
Thank you.
You will be seeing king salmon on the menu instead of Atlantic salmon from this week. Frank's going to do a lesson on how to smoke your salmon.
Absolutely.
We could do that. We give you a quick little recipe on how to smoke your own salmon. Got a Weber? It'll work.
Oh, that was wonderful, Lee, learning all about the salmon. I'm just thinking with that beautiful grilled piece, have you got something that will go with that?
I do indeed, Jane. To pair with the salmon, we have a fabulous roasted beetroot, fennel and feta salad. So I'm salivating over that already. This is prepared actually by Jason, who is a member at Box Divvy Newtown, and he also happens to be a chef. So we are in very good hands. I love the way he shows us how to use even the frond of the fennel with using it like a herb in the dish. So let's take a look at Jason and this salad to pair with the fish.
Wonderful.
Hello everybody, Jason here, Box Divvy customer and chef for over 15 years. Today I'm going to be walking you through a delicious and nutritious dish using these bad boys, beetroot, and adding it to a delicious salad that also includes the rest of these amazing Box Divvy ingredients here. We're going to be adding a bit of roasted fennel, some feta, some toasted almonds, and beautiful fresh dill. Alrighty, we're moving on to the first step of the process, which is roasting our beetroot. And trust me, this couldn't be any easier. All we're going to do is take our beetroot, boil, and wrap it up. I would say these are going to take anywhere between 40 minutes to an hour and a half. The way we're going to check on them is with a knife. And all you want to be able to do is push a knife straight into the beetroot and for it to have very little resistance. So oven is set to 200 degrees Celsius. All right, we'll finish wrapping these up and pop them into the oven. The next part is we're going to take our beautiful fennel here and we're going to chop off the stems, the stalks. Now, I'm not going to throw these away. We're going to use a few of the fronds for the actual garnishing of the salad. But once you finally dice them up, you can saute them or even just toss them fresh through a salad. The actual stems themselves, we used to work in restaurants, we would pop them into stock pots. All I'm going to do is take the bowl, place it down on the board like that. I'm just going to gently trim off the end, and that's just going to allow me to pull away the outer layer. That can go into the stock pot as well. So I'm just going to pop that over there. The process, we're going to pop it on its side there, being very careful with your knife. Make sure it is nice and sharp. We're going to cut it directly down the center. Cut slightly at an angle in order to be able to ensure that the pieces that we cut all have a little bit of root. Cut through and rotate the fennel around. And what you're going to end up with are pieces of fennel that look like that. We have our red fennel in our roasting pan, olive oil, a pinch of salt, and give it a bit of a mix around. I'm just going to drop the temperature down just a touch. And we can go back down to 180. You can keep it on 200 until you go to roast, that's fine. Because as soon as you open up the oven door, you're going to lose a bit of heat anyways. I have 100 grams of fresh raw almonds here. I'm just going to pop them onto our roasting pan. I'm going to chuck them in with the fennel, 180 degrees. These aren't going to take as long, so you usually need to keep an eye on them. I'm going to set a timer for about 5 minutes, check on them, give it a bit of a shake, toss around, pop them back in. You got to check on them quite consistently because with a lot of nuts, there's a lot of fat in it, and that fat will tend to seep out and it can burn quite easily. So we just want to toast them. We don't want to roast them. If anybody's never used dill before, you don't want to use the stem. It is edible. You can finely dice it up, but to be honest with you, the leaves, they have a very gentle dill flavor, and that's what we're going for. So I'm just going to finish picking off this dill here, and here we have our beautiful picked dill. All right, we're going to set that aside for the moment, and then we're going to move on to the next step, which is cutting or peeling and cutting our beetroot. I changed over chopping boards here because I don't want to get my beetroot juice on the wooden one. Okay, so these have been in for 1 hour and 20 minutes. Just going to give them another quick test. beautiful. Very little resistance. It's just like a well-cooked potato. Now, again, you can choose to wear gloves if you want, because beetroot juice can stay in your fingers. It'll come out. Now, it's very important when you go to cool down your beetroot after you take it out of the oven is that you keep it wrapped in the foil. That's going to help it steam a little bit more, and that's what's going to give you that separation from the flesh with the skin. That is going to aid you in peeling it, which is what we're going to do now. The first thing we're going to do is we're just going to take the root part at the top off. That comes off nice and easy. And you can kind of see as soon as I've done that, the skin has just started to kind of droop off. And that's all it is. You're just going to peel it. The beetroot skin is just literally going to fall off for you. The knife is really just in case you have any parts that are still sticking. All right, so this beetroot here, the skin is actually sticking a little bit more than the rest. So what you can see that I'm doing, I'm just using the sharp side of the knife very gently and brushing it against the skin. And all that's going to do is just peel it away, nice and easy. You can get a multitude of different colors of beetroot as well. Rainbow beetroot are beautiful. You can get yellow beetroot. So I'm going to cut the beetroot in a unique way. I'm not just going to do cubes and dices and things like that. I lived in Japan for about 6 years and I worked over in kitchens there as well. And there's a cutting technique called rangiri. I don't roll my R there like I'm Spanish, but rangiri. Rangiri in English can also mean oblique. So an oblique cut or rangiri cut is where you basically try to achieve the same size but with different shapes. Right now I'm just going to pop this oven off. Take our beautiful toasted almonds out. Leave them up there to rest. Nice little charred end pieces and still a bit of crunch, a bit of bite. All right, beetroot. Because it's so big, it's hard to do an oblique cut just in that size. So I am just going to cut it down the center once, turn it 90 degrees and cut it down the center again, just to make it easier to handle. Okay, so from this point here, what we're going to do is we're going to flip it over, cut it down the center. So I've got now another 2 pieces. From here is where we become oblique. I'm going to cut it that way and I'm going to turn it 90 degrees up on its end. And then I'm going to cut it again. Turn it 90 degrees. I'm going to cut it again. 90 degrees. One more cut. You're going to end up with a bunch of different pieces that are roughly the same size, but all different shapes. And that is going to create a very visually appealing salad. Alrighty. So next part, our Greek feta. This will add a bit of color, but also a beautiful salty flavor for our salad. I'm just gonna pop these guys into this bowl. The only thing we're going to be doing now is chopping up our almonds. And again, I'm not going to do this in any particular fancy way. It's just going to be a rough chop. I'm just going to cut it into thirds or a quarter. So just like that, okay? Nice big chunks. With this type of salad, you could substitute your vegetables as well. Instead of beetroot, sweet potato would be beautiful, pumpkin even. You could even do roasted cauliflower or broccoli. All right, team, the next part is the best part, the plating of the dish. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our beetroot, and over here I have 25 ml of balsamic vinegar. This one's actually delicious caramelized balsamic vinegar, but delicious caramelized sweetness, which we're just going to drizzle over our beetroot. And that's just going to enhance the flavors that are already existing in the beetroot, the sweetness, that kind of earthiness. It's also going to add slight tartness, being balsamic vinegar. I'm going to get my fingers in there and we're going to layer our salad. Being very careful, of course, because beetroot is beetroot and it will stain. So that's the first part there, beetroot layered. The next part, I'm going to go with a bit of our fennel. Because we just kind of let it fall into place. I guess a good term you could use is draping. So that's probably less than half. All right, I'm going to go a little bit of salt to help draw out the flavour. Crack of pepper and the feta. I'm just going to gently squeeze and break and drop. All right, feta, Dunskies, almonds. Okay, a little bit of dill. Back to our beetroot, so rinse and repeat. I'm just going to finish off with a quick little drizzle of extra virgin olive oil, roast beetroot, roast fennel, Greek feta, almonds, balsamic vinegar, dill, fennel fronds. Amazing. And that is dinner done.
Scrumptious. Oh, that was so yummy, Lee. Jason's done a wonderful job. It actually reminds me of a quick story about an 8-year-old who was packing one of the box divvies, and they had a fennel fronds. And we were at a school, and he said to all his mates, I'm going to do fennel frond dip for tomorrow morning. And a teacher tells me, came in the next morning with the fennel frond dip. He had the recipe and they absolutely loved it. So it goes to show you can use the whole plant. You don't just use the end bulb. So
You can,
pretty wonderful.
and the fondue is an amazingly fragrant thing to add to many dishes. So
Yeah.
don't throw it out. Use the whole lot.
Use the whole
All
lot.
right. All right. Well, here we are. There we are, Jane. That's our 9th episode done and dusted.
Oh, wonderful. We'll see you in a couple of weeks, everybody. Thanks for coming on board with Unsupermarket. And with Box Divvy, we are Unsupermarket.
Yes, follow, and subscribe. See ya. You look like a wiggle there, Jane.